I arrived here in September of 1956. I have just been hired on the staff of Sharbot Lake High School. In those days, high schools in Frontenac County were the responsibility of a committee of Frontenac County Council. In 1969, the Ministry of Education decided to combine all of the school within the city of Kingston and the county of Frontenac under one school board. And that included all the high schools with all the schools. And you see, in those days, the city had its own board of education controlling high schools and elementary schools. In the county, the high schools were the responsibility of Frontenac County Council.
Right.
But all the elementary schools were the responsibility of each township.
Okay.
So there were 15 little boards of education.
Okay.
Many of them were little 1 and 2 room schools.
Right.
Now, in the mid-60s, the public school inspector decided to eliminate all of these little 1 and 2 room schools. Out of the 12 or 15 of those that we have, maybe 2 of them were good.
Okay.
The rest were average, and 1 or 2 of them were absolute miseries. There were some of those schools where, you know, they had teachers who were grade 12 kids right out of school, or half the kids in the school were older and bigger than the 17-year-old girl.
Right.
And it was impossible. And I remember I used to visit all those schools. That's how I know. I mean, as a grade 8, I visited the grade 8s there in May and June because they were coming into grade 9.
Right, to figure out
preparation and that sort of thing. And I remember one young lady she reached into her purse for a piece of chalk. She was buying her own chalk. They weren't even supplying her with chalk. There weren't enough books to go around. Those little 1-room schools were more negatives than positives. The larger numbers allow you to do more programs. Sharbot Lake High School was designed to have maybe 100 kids in grade 9, 75 kids in grade 10, 40 kids in grade 11, 30 in grade 12, and 20 in grade 13.
So the expectation was that they would fade away.
And see, grade 10 was all you needed then to join the OPP, join the military, and so on. And then in 1962, they changed that. They cranked that up to grade 12.
Right, okay.
In addition to the fact that the bubble was coming through, the
baby boomers.
The baby boomers hit grade 9 in September of ’63. And it's like they didn't know this was going to happen.
Right.
The school was built for 220 kids, and we had 360 the first day of school.
Right.
My first day as acting principal.
So you're always active, obviously, in the church.
Well, yes.
Right.
As long as I've been here, yes.
Right.
And we were in that little brick building.
You were in that little brick building.
Across from the hotel, which was designed to hold, I think you could sit 45 people. Let's say 50. And then there would be 80 of us many Sundays.
Right.
And in the summertime, 300. We were outside once. We had mass in the parking lot of the beer store.
Okay.
And once in the parking lot of the hotel.
Okay.
Once inside the hotel one winter in the bar downstairs.
Okay.
When our furnace blew up.
Oh no.
My last day of work was Friday, January the 29th or 30th.
Right.
My first day of retirement was Monday, February the 1st. And on the Sunday in between, we created the church building committee.
Right.
We knew in the 60s that we needed another building. I mean, that place couldn't be heated.
Right.
It was uncomfortable. It was too crowded. There was only one door. Broke every fire regulation. There was only one door in, one door out. The windows were too small for anybody except the 1-week-old baby.
Right.
And we figured, okay, we're going to do one full year of serious fundraising.
Right.
Well, the fundraising went quite well. And we realized that we were raising enough funds that the architect, Armando Sardina from Kingston, said, well, you know, you can build a full-size church, 50 by 80, with a full basement, that's, as the
With-
funds were
right.
coming in and
Right.
being committed, the plan expanded. And
Right.
that would have been, I think, almost double to almost 600,000.
600,000, right.
And that's what we built.
Picture.
We had a mortgage of $169,000 from the bishop, from the
Okay,
archdiocese.
From the archdiocese.
We knew we could afford to pay $1,000 a month on the mortgage, and that
Right.
was
That's all.
25 years.
Right.
And the bishop says, I don't do 25-year mortgages. I said, that's funny. He said, I do.
Right.
I said, we're short $50,000 if we have to pay it back in 20 years. He called somebody and he wrote out a check for $50,000. And he says, there's your $50,000.
Okay.
He gave us $60,000 so we could buy a property with a half-finished cottage. And we finished it with gifts and given labor, donated labor, and so on.
Off the
We
cottage.
raffled off the cottage at $100 tickets. And we
Okay.
had very little trouble selling the tickets.
Right. Yeah. I guess.
It just went. I got letters in the mail from Manitoba.
So whose idea was that to do that?
Doreen Onforchuk. She was on the
wow.
committee at the time, and that was her idea. She found the cottage.
Wow.
She ran the whole thing. We made our last payment in 2000,
Okay.
and we never asked for money. We never did a fundraiser of any kind. The donations just came in. I was involved with creating the county library back in the 60s. I was on a subcommittee convincing Oso Township to go to support a county library system.
Okay.
They needed 9 townships out of the 15 with 60% of the population and
Per
the assessment. Bruce Geddes was the chief librarian for a provincially supported group called the Lake Ontario Library Association. But he supplied us with books, and we had a sort of tryout library in the United Church Hall a couple of afternoons a week, and at which time we were getting people to sign a petition, taxpayers to sign a petition. It worked. The county, I appeared at Township Council, I've got petitions, we have numbers, so many books, and the first, several of the names, I would say at least 4 names on the first page of the petition were the wives.
The wives of council members.
Wives of council members.
Okay.
And the other one was a council member herself, Mrs.
Right.
LaRock.
Okay.
It might have been 3 or 4 or 5. I don't remember
Right,
the exact
but-
number, but I had fixed that front
But
page.
it was deliberate. Whatever it was
Absolutely.
deliberate. Right.
It was vicious,
Right. Right.
but it worked. And the vote came to county council again in early '69 or late '68,
Right. Right.
and this time there
You
were
had
10
to-
townships.
10
So they went from 7 or 8, lacking 1 or 2, to having 2 more than
Mhm.
required to pass that vote and establish the county library.
Right.
When you don't have one, you go after it. It's like we
Right.
didn't have an arena, we
Right.
went after it. We didn't have services, we went, you fill in the gaps.